Hello again. Uncle Roddus here with another random shelf pick video. So it's the second week of the random shelf picks, and I got the missus to pick me another 10 CDs randomly from my collection for me to have a listen to over the next 7 days, and we'll get straight into it. So the pile here. Right, first of all we have the Strokes. This is it, their debut album from 2001. Great indie pop. What's this one here? This is one of John Zorn's Zadok Records releases, and it is Basia Schnechter, Queen's Dominion. Not sure about that one, what that is. Haven't listened to it probably since I bought it, but nice to see something a little bit different for me to listen to. This one here, everyone will know, Velvet Underground's first album. I've actually got a vinyl copy of that now, so maybe I'll play the vinyl copy instead. This one here, Triple J Hot 100 Volume 3. This is a double CD compilation of various artists from the Australian Triple J station, and they actually, I think they're still putting these out. These first came out in the early 90s. I have the first 11 volumes, I think, of this. So this one was 96, so yeah, they started in about 93 with volume 1. So there's some cool music on here. Yeah, 90s alternative pop. We've got quite a mix of music. So we've got Coolio's Gangsta Paradise, which is a great song. Heroin Girl, Everclear. Tism, He'll Never Be an Old Man River. That's a brilliant Australian song. Mindless Drug Hoover, the Reefer song. Some Jeff Buckley, Garbage, Regurgitator, Tripping Daisy, Faith No More, Foo Fighters, Spiderbait, Portishead, Glory Box, great song. Techno Head, I Want to Be a Hippie. Yeah, so double CD, so lots of cool stuff on there, some pretty good classic songs. So that's fairly modern rock, and then at the other end of the scale we have a blues compilation of Arthur Big Boy Cudrup, who was a big influence on Elvis Presley, I understand. And then, well, Presley's first song was a cover of one of Arthur Crudup's songs. Crudup, Arthur Crudup, yeah. Anyway, so this is the Blues History series. So there's quite a lot. These are pretty cheap compilations, so they mastered just pretty much straight off the old 78s. Next up, David Bowie, Hunky Dory, great album, looking forward to hearing that again. This is the 1999 digital remaster in, what does it say, 24-bit digitally remastered. Yep, fair enough. Next one, Miles Davis, Miles Smiles. Not all familiar with this one, so that's cool, be nice to touch base with it again. This one here is some John Zorn. Now John Zorn has a series of 25 volumes of film music that he composed for all sorts of documentaries and movies and cartoons in Japan. So this is Working Man's Deaf Filmworks Volume 26. So it's quite a late one. 26? No, we'll try that again. I can't read my Roman numerals properly. XV1, which would be 16. Yeah, so volume 16. So some really good music on these CDs, especially for newbies to John Zorn's catalogue. This music is quite a lot more accessible than a lot of his other stuff. Also, this was the series where he debuted some of the very early Masada songs as they were getting together. A couple more here, some pretty hardcore Ministry from the early 90s. When was this one? 1992. This is the only Ministry CD I own, and the reason I brought this was because it's got Jesus Built My Hot Rod, which is pretty cool. Yeah, Jesus. Actually haven't listened to this for quite some time, so sort of, those who don't know, it's a pretty full-on blend of industrial heavy metal. Yeah, so that'll be good to hear that again. And finally for this week we have the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. If I remember rightly, this was their third album out from 2000, no, where is it? No, can't actually, oh there it is, 2005, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, How. This is a really good album. I think this is their best album. Again, I haven't listened to it for a while, which is one of the reasons I'm doing these random picks to get into these CDs. So just quickly whiz through those. That's that lot for the week, and then just touching on a few CDs that turned up in the mail. Playing behind me is this On and On. This is a New Zealand band. This was recorded in 2007. Now this is actually, the CD came with a vinyl copy that I brought, which is what's playing in the background. And yeah, this is great, kind of Flying Nun influenced indie pop, bit of punk thrown in for good measure, and there's some pretty catchy songs. I've been listening to it on the phone at work, on the smartphone with my Blu-ray headphones that I've got. So yeah, that's cool. So I've got a CD copy, but there's actually a vinyl copy of that playing behind me, which I'll talk about on another video. So I've been catching up with a bit of old New Zealand music, and speaking of the Flying Nun I just mentioned, we've got a couple of compilations that I picked up from their Flying In Records on the internet, which is where a lot of the Flying Nun sell their online stuff. So these were pretty cheap to buy, and that one there, Where in the World is Wendy Broccoli? Most of that stuff's from the early 90s to the mid 90s, so I wasn't that familiar with it. There is a couple of earlier tracks. There is the very first Flying Nun single by the Pin Group, Ambivalence, which is Flying Nun 001, which was released in 1981, I think it was. That's on here. It wasn't as good a song as I remember. If I'd even heard it before, I wasn't that familiar with it. There was another quite an old one. Can't remember now which one it was. So Chris Knox, Shane Carter, Chainsaw Masochist, Queen Meanie Puss, 25 Cents doing a great version of The Witch, which I really enjoyed. And then this next one from Flying Nun, like, these are pretty budget compilations, but they've got some good stuff on them. And this is a little bit later. I mean, this was a 2003 compilation, but the songs are a lot more round about that time from memory. A while back I showed a record that I purchased by a band called Southern Front from my hometown of Christchurch, and that was an album that was released on Failsafe Records in 1984, and it was one that I had a copy of it originally, and then of course sold it off for my vinyl collection, and then managed to find a copy of it fairly recently, which is really cool. Anyway, Failsafe Records were a Christchurch label, and so they were putting out cassettes up until the Southern Front album, which was the first piece of vinyl they put out, but then they put out a few more cassettes. So I didn't really get into a lot of vinyl. Most of it was cassette releases. So they had some compilations that got quite well known around the place, and they've since been reissued on CD, and I managed to finally get my hands on a couple. So the first one is the Accident compilation, and so this is alternative music from Christchurch from 1980 to 84. So some of the bands were a little bit before my time in that they were, you know, I was still a young fella in high school and I didn't really get to see them, but it starts off with the Gordons, who are just like ultimately the best, greatest Christchurch band that ever lived. I mean, they are just awesome. And then some early punk stuff from, you know, like 1980 and 1981, 82. three of the bands were actually forerunners to the Southern Front that I just mentioned. And then we get through, so there's a few names that I don't know, and there's quite a few that I do. As we get down to later, They Were Expendable, which was Jake Clarkson's thing, and then Playthings, which was the actual precursor to They Were Expendable with Jay Clarkson again. But unfortunately, the Playthings song hasn't got a Jay Clarkson vocal because they had another singer, and that's a shame because I really like Jay Clarkson, and the Playthings music is almost impossible to find at all. I did have one of their singles once, but they only put out basically a live album, which is very, very hard to find, and then a couple of singles. There is one of the singles on YouTube, which I was watching the other day. Yeah, great, awesome band. So, a bit disappointed that the song on here is one of their better ones. So then we jump ahead a little bit later to a second Failsafe compilation called South, and this is 1987. Yeah, 1986, 87. So not quite so familiar with some of the names on here, although there's tracks by the Bats, Tinnitus, Tall Dwarfs, Breathing Cage, All Fall Down. I mean, they were bands that I know that I recognise the name, but not so much the music. Although I know about the Tall Dwarfs and stuff and the Bats. So yeah, really cool New Zealand compilations. Really pleased to have those, and it's good to get back into New Zealand music again and that. So I've got a few pieces of vinyl that have come in soon, so I'll do another video about them with some New Zealand music that's quite impressive. So anyway, so that is my random shelf picks and new arrivals for the week, and yeah, we'll see you next time.